How you going, guys? It's so good to be back. Had a few days off, but now I'm back into these videos. We had an early Christmas. So much fun, so many good times. But now let's get back into these videos. And by the way, I got those as part of a Christmas present. I really appreciate them. Good stuff. But in the topic of this video, I've titled it, Non-Duality, It's Not What You Think. This is a play on words because non-duality isn't about what you think or isn't about what you say. And what comment inspired this video? It was this one. Now, this comment would have taken 3 screenshots to put on the screen, but I'm only going to put in the first chunk of the comment. Look, this comment makes a lot of sense. It's speaking the truth. And I obviously can't read it right now, but I've got it on my phone, my iPhone 8. I know it's old, but it works, doesn't it? So what does it say here? If you believe in non-duality as being a reality in itself, you are not understanding what non-duality is. If you believe in a source, you're not understanding non-duality. If you believe in different perspectives, such as reflective consciousness or pure consciousness, you do not understand non-duality. If you believe consciousness is Atman, higher self, one, you don't understand non-duality. If you believe in a dream paradigm versus a materialistic paradigm, you do not understand non-duality. As soon as you open your mouth and speak of non-duality, as if you've understood it, you have lost it. Look, if you want to read this whole comment, it was left on this video, wherever I'm going to put it. And this person that left this comment is making sense. I 100% agree with what they're saying. If you believe non-duality is concepts, and if you believe in those concepts, they're right. It is not that. It's like that saying, it's like a finger pointing to the moon. If you focus on the finger, get so caught up in the finger, you're not seeing where it's pointing to, the moon. And this is why I've said this time and time again. When I talk about things like the source, people, not only this person, but other comments have said, you're creating a duality, source and you coming from the source. And look, I've said this many times. It is only the source, emerging from the source, interacting with the source. You're trapped in the source. The reason we have to speak like this is because of language, the limitations of language. Another thing I should mention is, this is why these teachers of Advaita Vedanta, these enlightened gurus, some enlightened beings chose to remain silent, like this comment was suggesting. Others decided to teach. And thank goodness they decided to teach. Thank goodness they were able to pass down this knowledge. And they would only do it, by the way, to qualified students, as I mentioned in another video. What were the 4 qualifications of a qualified student? It was these 4, which I can't see right now. And if I remember these off the top of my head, it's discrimination, being able to discriminate between the real and the unreal, the changing and the unchanging, dispassion, seeing that this world of changing appearance is changing. How can you find lasting happiness in the changing? So becoming dispassionate towards it. The next one is discipline, having the discipline to do spiritual practice, to tough it out, even when you don't want to. The final one is desire, a strong desire to be free, a strong desire to end your suffering. I would not have been qualified for these. I would have probably had the last one at most. And that's where I've finally made progress. I had such a strong desire to learn this, to end my suffering. That's what powered me through all this. I was going down dead ends, misunderstanding teachings. I would not have been qualified. If I went up to a guru thousands of years ago, they would have said, no, Simon, get out of here. You're not qualified for this. The reason they wanted you to be qualified is to stop all this confusion. You know what it's like? It's like going into a mathematics class, general mathematics. And in one lesson, they talk about calculus. Then the next lesson, they talk about arithmetic. Then the next lesson, they talk about algebra. You know, scattered random information. You're going to get so confused. Some of this information is going to contradict. You're going to start thinking mathematics is ridiculous. And that's how most of us learn the teachings of non-duality these days. At this point in life, there is so much information out there. And so many people try to teach themselves. So you're getting all these random teachings from different perspectives, and you're thinking non-duality is ridiculous. Non-duality was supposed to be taught in a systematic way. Like I said, with mathematics, you're meant to start at arithmetic, then move to algebra, then calculus. Non-duality, look, it wasn't so mystical. We see guys in robes thinking, oh, it's all religious. And they talked about religion. But ultimately, their message was the one thing. It is the one source appearing as many. We look back at these teachers and think, yeah, they're wearing robes, it must be all religious. And with our scientific way of thinking, with our logical way of thinking, we dismiss it. So many people dismiss it going, nah, anything to do with religion, I don't want to hear. It's probably a belief, it's made up. But you know what Advaita Vedanta really was? The study of consciousness. Consciousness has non-objective qualities. This is why science cannot study it at this point. Apparently, I heard there are 10 categories that consciousness studies fall into. Not 10 theories on consciousness, 10 categories. So that's another thing. When we're talking about consciousness, most of us aren't even talking about the same thing. I've noticed many times when I talk about pure consciousness, other people are talking about reflected consciousness. These are two different things in Advaita Vedanta. Pure consciousness is the fundamental nature of reality, and reflected consciousness is the feeling of consciousness belonging to this body. Now look, I've made videos on this and I will continue to make more, but this is what I'm saying. This is why it's so hard to talk about. Because you've got different people speaking at different levels, like this comment, speaking from the highest level. You've got people with different definitions of consciousness. You've got people thinking Advaita Vedanta is a belief, when it's not. What it is using the scientific method of investigating, but on the subject that you are. Science deals with objective reality, but how do you deal with this subject that you are? You know you exist. It's the only thing you know for certain, which is what the philosopher Descartes was doing in his meditations. He questioned everything, Descartes. He said anything we know could be a lie, it could be false. We could be in a dream. We could be in the Matrix. We could be being controlled by an evil demon, giving us a reality that's not as it appears to be. Descartes went through this exercise, questioned all his knowledge, questioned all his assumptions, questioned if he was a human being. The one thing he couldn't deny is he knew he existed. Everything we know can be challenged, argued, debated, can change. The one thing we know for certain, that we exist, we can't know it directly with our instruments of knowledge, because it has non-objective qualities. So Advaita Vedanta is the study of consciousness. But here's the thing that science doesn't like. It has to be a subjective inquiry. Science likes the objective reality, and Advaita Vedanta has no issue with this. Advaita Vedanta will say, if the nature of reality is consciousness, this is like a dream. If this was a dream, the dream scientist can study the dream. Study how it works, study all the theories and the laws of the dream, no problem. What I should also mention is many scientists in the early days were Christian. They had no conflict with God. They thought God created the universe, they just want to study the laws. How does this universe that God created function? And at some point down the line, some scientists got rid of this idea of God and thought they could explain everything in terms of science. No, you can only study the objective reality with science. There's no problem with that. But when you try to study consciousness as an object, that's where you run into problems. And again, I've gone off into a rant. But the only reason I'm doing this is to drill home the fact that, yes, they're right in this comment. Consciousness cannot be talked about. Brahman cannot be talked about. Brahman is a concept, but the concept of Brahman is, you need to understand, it's the concept that has no concepts attached to it. How can we speak about anything in reality? It has to fall into 5 categories. It must be part of a class or a species. A dog, that's a species. A horse, a human. Brahman is not a species. It has to have a quality. We can say the red flower, the yellow car. Brahman has no qualities, so we can't speak about that. The third thing to speak about anything is an action. For instance, the cook. The person cooking is called the cook. The driver, the musician. They're performing an action, we can talk about them. Brahman performs no action. The next way to talk about anything is relationship, which you need 2 people. A father needs a son or a daughter. A teacher needs a student. See? That's another way. But there is only one Brahman. There is no son Brahman and father Brahman. It's just Brahman. So there is no relationship. We can't talk about relationship. The final way to talk about anything is convention. For example, my name is Simon. That's just a word, that's just a name we've all agreed to call me. Simon isn't a class. Simon isn't a quality. Simon isn't an action. Everyone just agreed at my birth, call him Simon. And that's what we do. But Brahman, there is no name for Brahman. Okay, there's a name for Brahman, but ultimately, because we need to use language. This is what these ancient teachers, they struggled with. And they knew this problem. This is why they speak about Brahman in paradoxical language. It's smallest than the small, yet greater than the great. It is beyond sound and silence, yet is the fabric all sound and silence is made from. They speak in paradoxical language to get you to intuit what they're saying. Language is dualistic. And again, like this person was saying in this comment, they're correct. And I was like this for the longest time. Once these teachings clicked, I thought, I cannot speak about this. I should sit in silence, never speak about this. But then I realized what was happening. I was boxing myself into a concept. I was limiting Brahman into it cannot be talked about, which is, after this person left this comment, that was the reply I gave, which is here. I just simply said, sitting in silence is a concept too. Because it's true. If you sit in silence, it's a concept. If you talk about it, it's a concept. You need to hear these teachings and intuit what they're saying. And once it clicks, you're free to sit in silence, you're free to talk. They're just trying to get you to see all of reality is all concepts. I like to bring in another story, which I'm sure you've heard if you're into the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. The washerman and the donkey. In ancient India, they would take your washing, put it on a donkey, and take it down to the river banks to wash. The washerman would come to your house, take your clothing, take it down. How he would usually do this in this story is he'd go down to the river, tie his donkey to a tree with a rope, do the washing, put it back on the donkey, untie the donkey, be on his way, deliver the clothes again. There was one day, he forgot this rope for some reason or another. He goes down to the river, thinks, oh no, how am I going to tie my donkey to the tree? I've forgotten my rope. Luckily, as in many of these stories, a wise man is walking down the road and says, what's wrong, washerman? He says, oh, look, there's nothing you can do to help me, but I'm just so upset. I forgot my rope. I can't tie this donkey to the tree. It's going to run off if I start doing the clothing. The wise man said, don't worry. Pretend to tie this donkey to the tree, then do your washing. So the washerman was a bit nervous. He did what the wise man said, pretended to tie the donkey to the tree, started walking away slowly with the clothes, realized the donkey wasn't moving, ended up doing the washing, coming back, the donkey remained perfectly still. He got on the donkey, went, giddy up, let's go. It didn't move. Now he's like, oh great, good job, wise man. The donkey didn't move, but now it won't leave. The wise man said, calm down. Now untie the donkey, pretend to untie the donkey, and then ask it to move. He pretended to untie the donkey, and the donkey started moving. Why do they teach this in Advaita Vedanta? This imaginary tying to the tree is what Advaita Vedanta is saying are all our concepts about the world. When we're born, we're a clean slate. All these concepts of the world tie us to this tree. I'd like to just modify this story slightly to show you what Advaita Vedanta is doing. We're apparently trapped to the tree in life. We're apparently in suffering through all our concepts. Here's what Advaita Vedanta is doing. Here's a modification of the story. As they're untying the worldly imagined concepts, they're simultaneously tying Advaita Vedanta enlightening concepts. So you're removing worldly, tying enlightening concepts. What has this done? You're still trapped in concepts. You've removed worldly concepts, now you're trapped in enlightening concepts. And I'd like to think of these enlightening concepts on an imaginary longer rope. So now you're still tied to the tree, but you have more freedom to move around. But once you've removed the worldly concepts, you've got the enlightening concepts, then Advaita slowly removes the enlightening concepts in the end. And then all this stuff that this person was talking about in this comment makes sense. To speak about it means to not understand it. To talk about pure consciousness, reflected consciousness, is to not understand it. What I'm saying is they're correct, but this is the final understanding. This is the final realization that you need to intuit. Advaita Vedanta will take your mind to the brink, to the limit, where you're kind of on the edge, but you don't even try to fall off. You accidentally fall off the edge. They're taking your mind to the cliff and you accidentally fall off and all this clicks. That's all they can do. They cannot push you off. You cannot even push yourself off. They just keep you hanging around the edge until a gust of wind blows you and it all clicks. See what I'm saying? So this person is correct. Everything they said is correct. But if someone is a beginner and comes to Advaita Vedanta, if you hammer them with all these, what was written here, they're going to leave. They're going to go, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. This is confusing. It's like, again, like the mathematics example, coming to a math class and being hit with calculus. You're going to walk out. You need to lay the foundation with arithmetic, algebra, then calculus. So why do I talk about Advaita Vedanta? Why do I use all these complex examples? Because again, they're trying to break you out of this conditioning of the materialist paradigm. Thinking you're a separate person in a separate universe that was born, is living, and going to die. They're trying to get rid of these worldly concepts and then replace them with enlightening concepts, and then to remove the enlightening concepts. So this is why I choose to talk about it. And I could just as well remain silent, which I did. But again, like I said, then that's just a concept, isn't it? So look, thank you so much for this comment. I really appreciate it. And you're speaking truth, but I'm just trying to say, well, how were any of us meant to learn this truth? How are these enlightened gurus teaching this? They weren't sitting in silence. Even though they knew that is the ultimate teaching, they had to use language. Paradoxical language when talking about reality, about Brahman.